In this video, I want to talk a little bit about academic research. Now, there are all kinds of research, and that word has a fairly broad meaning, actually. For instance, probably from 279, you know the difference between primary, for instance. My computer working here. The difference between primary research and secondary research. Primary research is research you do yourself. Most frequently, we might think of that as lab work, for instance. When you're doing work in a lab, you're doing that research yourself. You're uncovering that research yourself, and that is primary research. Secondary research is when you're looking at sources other people have done work, and you're looking at the work that they have done. Just as important. Now, of course, secondary research can take several different forms. We've spent a good bit of this semester using, for instance, web sources, and the web sources obviously come in a huge variety. But most of what we've looked at are sort of web pages that people have put together, offering advice on different subjects, and that's, as you know, we're using that in class. It's incredibly useful. But for this section that we're getting into now in the course, I want us to be focusing on something different, which I would call academic sources. Now, what I mean by academic sources are, the sources that are written by academics for academics. So these are the most professional pieces of information that you can find. And generally they come in a couple of types. There are books. Books are fine. Lots of important books, academic books, are published every year, and it's very important. It's a very important resource. The downside of books is that they're not published as frequently as what we're about to get into, and they, as a result, they tend to get dated very quickly. You can imagine with science just how quickly things change, and a book from 10 years ago is already going to be out of date. So we'll call this academic journal articles. Really, the gold standard in academic research, and the place where you want to go, is to academic journal articles. For one thing, you can usually read through this information more quickly than a book. But as I was also saying, academic journals articles come out more frequently, and so it's easier to track down. The most recent information. So, let's get into what an academic journal article is. So every discipline, whatever field you're going into, whatever discipline you're studying, has its own set of what are called academic journals. And these journals get published periodically, maybe a couple times a year, maybe 4 times a year, and they include articles written by academics, professionals in the field, for other academics. So this is the highest level information on subjects, the most professional information that you can get on a subject. Now, there are some downsides to that we'll talk about in class. For instance, because they're written by academics, they can be, and because they're written by experts for experts, they can be difficult to read if you are not an expert. But we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that in class. For now, what you need to know is why these are so important. Again, every discipline has their own set of journals. If you work in nursing, for instance, there are a whole set of journals aimed at nurses. If you work in mechanical engineering, there's a whole set of journals devoted to mechanical engineering. And again, all of these publish articles a few times a year. Now, what makes academic articles the gold standard is, first of all, again, they're written by academics, the highest level professionals, for other academics. Okay, so it's the subject matter is being discussed is at a very high level, and people are thinking about the subjects at a very high level. In addition, though, what marks academic journals out is what's called the peer review process. So an academic decides to write an article on mechanical engineering. He does research, he puts together the article, and he submits it to a journal in the field. What then happens is that that journal has 2 or 3 other experts read through that article and decide if it is worthy of being published. And that's the peer review process. And so you know that when an article gets published in a journal, it has been rigorously checked. It's gone through a rigorous process of peer review, and everybody agrees this is good, solid information. And so again, that makes this sort of the gold standard in research. This is, if you're doing high-level research, if you're doing serious research, this is where you want to be. Okay. Now, throw out one more thing, and then we'll switch over to how to deal with sources, how to find sources. But the last thing that you should know is that every discipline or field of study usually has a database, a searchable database for all the articles from all the journals in that field. So, for instance, if you're a medical professional, there's a database just to search for medical articles, and every field pretty much has this database, and the databases typically work something like Google. There's a search engine. There are ways to maximize your search results. There are ways to narrow your search results down, and whatever discipline you're in, it's a good idea to know A, what are the major journals in your field, and B, what's the database for searching through those journals? Because as you get more heavily into your field and do more research in your field, that those databases, being able to access those databases and find those sources can be very crucial. So let's move over here to let's talk about how to actually physically deal with these sources. Actually, it's not really much physical anymore. It's all sort of virtual. There are many ways to get to the School of Mines library website. You can type in library.sdsmt.edu. You can go to the SDSMT homepage, and there's a link there. I've also put a link here on our D2L homepage, so we'll just use that. Okay, so here's what comes up when you type in. Here's what comes up when you go to the library webpage. Now, one of the cool things that's happened in the last year and a half is that the library has. It used to be that you had to know the database that you wanted to use. You had to know the field that you were studying in, and sometimes you had to research multiple databases to find the information that you wanted. The library has streamlined that process in huge ways, and they've added some really amazing tools that help to keep everything organized. Now, what you want to do is go to this Primo search, which is in the middle of the page here. While this is loading up, I should also say what I'm going to tell you, all the things I'm going to tell you will work great if you are on campus. If you are not on campus, the only way this will all work is if you sign in through VPN. If you don't know how to do that, certainly let me know or ask someone else in class. It's a fairly easy process. It allows you to connect to the school network, and then once you're on the school network, you can use the library just like you would if you were on campus. So this is the page that comes up. Now, and you can do that. You can do this as a guest, but there are some great tools that are incredibly helpful if you sign in. You sign in the same way that you do to your email account. Here's your email and your email password. And here again, so we're back at the search page, but you'll notice that I'm now listed here. I'm searching as myself, instead of a guest. And again, there's some really cool stuff that's very helpful if you're signed in. So again, this works like any search engine. You guys know how to use search engines backwards and forwards. We can search for anything we want to. Let's search for tornadoes. Actually, so if I type in tornadoes or whatever the search engine is, search term is, it's just like Google. Here are all the resources that the search engine uncovered that have to do with tornadoes, and you can see it's a huge number. It's over 42,000, and so that's not going to. I'm gonna have to narrow that down as I go, but just as a starting point, you can see that, and one of the reasons it is 42,000 is because it includes absolutely everything. It includes newspaper articles, it includes books, it includes academic journal articles, it includes people's dissertations and master's theses. It includes everything that videos, if there are videos out there about tornadoes. It includes absolutely every resource that's out there, and that's a lot. Okay. Now you can narrow your search, and this is really useful to, for instance, only things that are peer reviewed. In other words, you can get rid of everything that's not a peer reviewed academic article, and that's hugely important. And it'll tell you here, only 6,000 of these 42,000 are peer reviewed, and so again, that's a lot, but it's certainly more narrow. If we get rid of all the fluff that's not academic journal articles, we are left with fewer things. We can search by do we want articles, do we want books, do we want newspapers, what type of sources. We can narrow all of these things down. You can see here it also gives some alternative subject matter that we might consider researching. We might consider researching meteorology, for instance. Just a whole lot of ways of narrowing your search. Okay. Now, what you'll notice over here is that it will tell you what these things are. So here, this is a book, obviously, and there's a nice handy icon in case you don't know the word book. So this is a book, and this is an article, right? And an article. Let's see what else there is on here. A lot of these are articles. There's another book. Often it will tell you if it is peer-reviewed. That's not always clear. For instance, a lot of these articles appear, well, it actually does say peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed article. Again, that's what you want, is an academic article that's been peer-reviewed. Book. There's a video on tornadoes. More books. So you can see, it'll tell you if it's a newspaper article. It'll tell you whatever it is. Okay, you're looking for peer-reviewed journal articles, peer-reviewed articles. Okay, like this one. So you know how to search. You know how to narrow. The next issue is there's some cool tools here that the library has given you to make things easier, and the biggest one is being able to very easily keep a list of your sources. So let's say let's back up. The first thing you got to do is figure out if you want this source or not, if this source is going to do what is something helpful for you. Now you know how to look through a Google search and decide which links are going to be helpful and which aren't. You know you're experts at that. But not, it's not always clear. This one's just called tornadoes, and there's nothing here that tells me any more about what is that about. Now I do know this article was written in 1890, which is quite some time ago. I wouldn't expect it to have the most up-to-date information, but I might say this: if I was interested in the history of how people have felt about tornadoes, this might be an excellent article to go to. But let's go here for a second. Now, one of the things that you can do to find out more about what this article is, let's see here. This one doesn't have them. Often, again, this is an old article, so it may not have this, but most articles, particularly current articles, are going to, here's one, tornadoes of sudden cardiac arrest, which clearly has nothing to do with tornadoes, but we'll click on it anyway. Which will give us a list of this. This can be very helpful in deciding if this is going to be a useful article for you. More than that is the abstract or description. And here we've got a description of what the article has to say. You can read through this very quickly and decide, is this an article that's going to be useful for me in my research or not? Okay. There's also a handy, where did they go? This again here. So let's say you find one you like. Obviously this one wouldn't be, but let's pretend it is. You want to keep this so that you have a record of it. Maybe you don't want to read it right now. You just want to make a list of all the articles that are interesting. Click this button over here that says keep this item. You're pinning this item to your page. You'll notice that it goes up here, and there's a similar button up here that is a link to all the things that you have pinned. So I could go through and pin, here's a projection model for how many people will die and get injured in tornadoes. That sounds interesting, so I'll pin that, and I can just go through here and pin everything that I'm interested in. Now all of that gets saved over here to my favorites, which if I want to click on. Now over time I have saved 33 items about different subjects. Some of these are articles actually that I saved just for class, so there's probably articles on tornadoes in here. But here we go. Here's my article. Here's my articles on tornadoes. Okay. Now, anytime I want to, I can take these out of my my saved box. I took those out. Okay. So again, very handy to keep track of. You can also save all your searches. This can be really handy if you, if you start putting in different search terms. Maybe you start off with tornadoes, but then you get very interested in, fatalities, and so your next search is tornado for fatalities, and that gives you a different set of results. You can keep track of all those searches so that you don't research something you've already done by saving your search. Okay, and every time you're in, it automatically saves your current search history, tells you what you've searched. I've searched tornadoes here, and it will tell you that for that day what you have searched. And then of course we've got to go back to the saved record. So these tools are incredibly valuable just in keeping track of how you're researching. One other thing you can do is add labels. Let's say you're doing research for my class into bridges, and in another class you're doing research into carbon dioxide. You can add labels to those so that they basically sort into two folders. It's a handy way of keeping all your searches organized so that you can have multiple research projects going at the same time and keep them all separated instead of having 32 items that are all crammed together. That's well. Let's do one more thing. So the last thing is you will notice with articles. Again, this is a peer-reviewed article that I have saved. It will tell you if the full text is available, and our library subscribes to a lot of journals and journal clearinghouses, and so we have a lot of articles that are readily available to us, and in this case, that's really what you want to focus on. You want to focus on articles that you can actually access. So if you click on the full text available, well, actually it lied, right? It's telling me no full text available, and that happens sometimes. You have to be cautious with some of these things. Here's one on Mad Men. So let's see here. Text available. Alright, so it will tell us where places where we can get it. So we're looking for this article. Let's see if we can track it down. Yeah. So here's the article. Alright, again, we can read the whole thing. I can download it to my computer and read it later. It's got an abstract. I can read the abstract and see if it's interesting, and then I can get into the whole article and just read the whole thing. Alright. And that's basically, again, for this project, we don't have a lot of time to go searching for resources that aren't in the library. So what you want to do is look for things that include that full text available. Okay. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, we can deal with these on when we get into class. For the moment, what you want to do is do some basic research into the topic that you've chosen for your group project, and see if you can't narrow things down to a handful of articles that look interesting. And then what the next step is, we're actually going to read 3 of those articles that you found. But you want to pick a wide range in case some of them don't work out, or they turn out not to be what you thought they were. But that'll give you a good start, and hopefully we can talk more about this on Friday.